I'm Troy Thompson. Over the last 15 years, our family has worked hard to create a place we call the center of the universe. A place where our kids and someday our grandkids can come home to and laugh, have fun, learn how to work, pray, worship God, and be a place to celebrate life with all our friends. After a quarter century in uniform, I put away one set of boots for another, working on our acreage, improving the land, fixing some structures, and building new ones. We say, give back to the community, be useful, keep your hands calloused, and spread the gospel. This is a little place in a little state right in the middle of flyover country, from which cries out a voice in the wilderness to all who might want to listen, learn, and laugh along with us. This is our American dream. Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. Hey, it's Monday. I'm recording this on a Monday. So for those of you who have been listening for a long time, this is the second week in a row that I've recorded the show the day of its release. And that's because I like to stay on top of, no, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. I had a great weekend, and a lot of times I record them over the weekend. A lot of times it is on a Sunday night, and in times past it's been earlier in the week, and sometimes it's even been weeks in advance, depending on whether it's an interview or whatever it happens to be. Not that you care about what's behind the curtain at the sunny side of life, but this is the second week in a row that I've actually just recorded it on the Monday morning before I head out for the day and begin my week doing whatever it is that I do around here at Sunnyside. And that's, I guess, kind of the theme of the whole show, things that are going on in what we think is the center of the universe. But this is, it was a great weekend. It was a great weekend. So I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then we'll move on to things we're going to talk about today, and then we'll get out of here, get to work, do things that we want to get done. And there's a lot to get done this week. So first of all, rain, go away. Man, you know, there was a time earlier, it was late winter, early spring, and, folks were saying, boy, it's going to be a dry one. We're going to have a lot of dry soil. It's going to be tough soil conditions for the farmers in the Midwest, and particularly in this area. And then we got a pretty good amount of rain, actually, in the last month or so. Quite a bit of rain. As we already discussed on this show, I'm not going to go into it in greater detail, but, the rain kind of got in the way of a little bit of my hay harvest, my first hay harvest of the season, and we made do with that. And now, in just the last few days, I bet we've gotten over a foot of rain. Yeah, that's a lot. We had 8 inches out here at Sunnyside, 8 inches of rain overnight, and that was on Friday night. And man, did it come down, and it just obviously flooded everything around our area, the north part of the state of Iowa, into Minnesota, and I don't have the full report. It's just a lot of rain, a lot of water, and it and I don't know. Hopefully we get some relief, but boy, I think that there were some towns to our west that really got inundated, and Spencer being one of them, where cars were underwater. And here in the great town of Forest City, where we're kind of located, we did get quite a bit of rain, and in the fields, it looks like it is just ponds and lakes all over the place, but they are slowly draining away, and everything around here goes into the Winnebago River, and that then, of course, is deluged, flooded, and the golf course is pretty well flooded at Bear Creek. We went out there on Saturday morning and saw that the floods were the water was rising. It's right there along the river, and we have a golf cart and a membership out the golf course there, and we wanted to make sure that our golf cart was okay, and it is. It's fine. It's up high enough, but boy, the water's right up to the shed, right up to it. And sometimes the water will actually come in just a little bit, but it would have to come in quite a bit in order to affect anything significant in the cart sheds there. And it's just, we could watch it come in, and it was, that happened. So it's quite a bit of damage actually to the local golf course, but that's not nearly as significant as the damage that it has caused to all of the crops that have been planted around the area. And so we'll see how long it takes to drain away all of this water, billions of gallons of water. I don't think I'm exaggerating with that. There's probably a mathematical formula to figure it out. But I do know that we got 8 inches. And I know that because we have a rain gauge, like good people that live in the country do. And my wife, Heidi, is super interested in uh, dumping out that rain gauge and finding the rain gauge. I guess as you get older, it's just something that you want to talk about. And it was full. It was, in fact, overflowing. Well, we assume it was overflowing because, everything was wet all the way around it. And so at least 8 inches of rain in one night. Did get a little bit of water in our basement out here. Not a lot, just maybe an inch. And that does happen, but it happens in extreme cases. We don't have, it used to be a regular occurrence. We got that mostly squared away. I'd say 99% squared away with good tiling in different places around the house and things like that. One of the things you have to do when you remodel old houses is you have to make sure that, water is the enemy. And certainly is so in this case. And we had just a little bit of rain, say 8 inches of rain. And then when you get all that in one time, it does cause some problems. And it did. Now, our wonderful dog Knox, he's got a little kennel down there in the basement. And he was a little concerned in the morning when I came down to visit him. And he was dry, but he was not very happy about this water that was in the basement. And the kids are used to it. So, Colin helped me, just push the water into the drain, the sump pump, and got it all cleared up, and it was taken care of. Lickety split. Not the case for everybody. Some folks in town and obviously around the area got quite a bit of rain in their basements. And if you're listening to this in a part of the country that doesn't have basements, well, we do in the Midwest because tornadoes. You got to have a place to go. And so, you got to have them. Of course, it's, water's going to find the lowest point, and sometimes it comes in people's basements depending on how the drainage goes. And that's what happened. Just a little bit, no damage, just the usual thing that we're kind of used to. Cleaned up real quick, and we were lucky to be able to move on and then go and do a little cleanup with some other places in town and help out some folks and that type of thing. As we do here in the Midwest, we move on, we get cleaned up and move on with our day. So we'll see how long this rain or this water sticks around. I will say this, now I can complain like a real farmer because, 7 acres of hay, and I'd say about 12% of my farm ground is underwater. So I don't know what you're supposed to do about that. I suppose real farmers would go file a claim somewhere or something like that, but I'm not a real farmer, so I don't get anything subsidized or anything like that. So I don't know how I don't even know how that works. I just know that there's a section of the hayfield that is underwater and had a lot of corn stalks from the field next to it that got, washed into it like everywhere else. And so I'll have to figure that out. Hopefully I can salvage that part of the hayfield and get those corn stalks off there when it dries up a little bit, and the hay will recover because it was doing pretty good. Get a little water on there, and it can't sit underwater. It doesn't grow underwater. It's not a pond plant, it turns out. So we'll see how that works out. But no subsidies for me. Not sure how that works. Can't make any claims. And even if I could, please don't write in and tell me that I can do that, because I'm not going to do the paperwork. That's not what I'm interested in anyway. So rain, go away. Lots and lots of rain. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. And so when you ask for rain, be careful what you ask for. God's like, I'll give you some rain. And he does. And so everything, we always thank God for the good things. We got to make sure to thank God for the times that we don't think are particularly in our plans, because there is something else that God has planned. And I don't know particularly what that is when it comes to a flood. I guess Noah, it's not that bad, right? Could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse. But we'll see. Hopefully everybody will be able to get out from under the water and get things dried off, and the crops will recover. And I don't know if it's too late to replant. Probably is. Sections that are pretty big areas that might lose some crops, and we'll see what happens as the days go on. So one of the things that we did a lot of things this weekend. It was kind of nice. Just take a weekend off. Didn't have any projects going on. Pretty much done with those press boxes that I talked about on and on and on and on. And so it was good to have that done. Glad to have that done before the big rain came. And so those are all sealed up. There's just a couple of trim pieces on one of the press boxes that I have to take care of. And I'll do that today, in fact. So looking forward to that. Got to get out of the studio here and go meet the truck and get a few pieces and then send some pieces back to the lumberyard. And we'll be all ready to go. In fact, tonight we're going to do a big thank you and try to get a good picture of all of the folks, almost 30 people that helped make these 2 press boxes happen, build them for the local school district. That's been a lot of fun. Well, I mean, it has been fun, and we're proud of them. They look great. It's been a lot of hard work, and I'll be glad to be done with it. And so that is happening today. Yay. So just kind of took the weekend off. And Saturday, after the big rain, and we, pushed a little water out of our basement, then we went into town, like I said, and visited the golf course, saw some friends there. Then we went to a graduation party, which was, I think it's the last graduation party for the senior class of 2024. And we took care of that and got to see some friends there. Then Forest City was doing some, there was a Brick Street Theater, which we've talked about. I've directed shows for Brick Street Theater. Heidi and I have been involved with that. And this time we're not doing anything. We just, my niece, who has appeared on this show in various skits and comedies, Finley, was in a show that they presented at Brick Street for their Brick Street Kids program. They do shoot 2 shows in the summer, and it's a pretty cool deal. They keep the kids involved. What was really cool for me as a director of Best Christmas Pageant Ever is that a lot of the kids that were in that show are in the kids Brick Street Kids program. And so it was just awesome to see a lot of those same kids performing and just really shining on stage and just doing a great job. And it's just fun to see the kids develop the confidence. And I really think that you can tell that the experiences that they've had up to this point, whether it was in the show that I was in or any other shows that they may have already been a part of, you can really tell that the confidence and the experience builds, and it shows on stage. So very fortunate to have a strong local community theater, a strong kids program where they're able to present these shows as about a 45-minute show. And it was really a good show. It was a musical. Of course, my niece Finley did a great job, and all the kids did just a really great job, and it was very entertaining and fun to watch. And so they'll do another one here in a little bit. I don't know exactly when that one comes up, but that's I think it's the history of the United States, or the United States, I don't know, Constitution, something like that, in 45 minutes or less, or something like that. But check it out on the website. Get tickets, go see the kids perform if you're in the local area. And if you're not, then support the kids programs that are out there in theater and the fine arts, because it is just such an important thing to have kids exposed to the theater in a wholesome environment, to learn the trade of communicating and performing, and just the things that go along with what it takes in all art forms to make a theater production happen. So we were happy to see that out at Brick Street, and it was fun. It was fun. I think the show was called Rainbow Fish, which is based on a children's book that has been, I think it's a European book that was translated, like Scandinavian, maybe. I don't know the exact details, but translated into English. Lots of, teachers and whatnot have read it in their in schools. And the premise is that there's a beautiful rainbow fish who is aware of her beauty and kind of enjoys that status. And the other fish really look up to her, but they just would like to, have a little bit of that beauty as well. And so it takes a little bit, but eventually they are able to convince the fish, the rainbow fish, that she would be happier if she shared her shiny, beautiful scales with the other fish. And so that's the premise. It's supposed to teach children how to share, and obviously that's an important thing for young children to learn, because children can be tyrants and they want to keep everything to themselves. So that's completely normal. And so you do want to have kids learn how to share with one another and to give to one another and to be kind to one another and to, help each other out. Of course, there's also some mildly socialist sentiment behind that. But as long as, and I agree, my first reaction is okay, so if somebody's going to give you if your community is saying, well, you have all of this and you should give it away so these other people, and you will be happier if you give your stuff away, then, I think that there's some truth to that. We like to give of our talents and labor and finances to a lot of community efforts and organizations, and we continue to do so, starting with the church and then other community groups and things that we're involved with here. Sharing is important, and being a sharing and giving person obviously is important. It's a very nuanced thing to have to teach young children. And I don't think you can necessarily cover it all in the confines of a children's book, because you do want to be able to give freely of yourself, but you also do not want to be taken advantage of. And so there's a fine line there, and different people have different versions of what that means, I suppose. Will always be people who take the time to really become experts in how other people should spend their money. I had a boss many years ago who where I learned to sell things, and he would say, "Yep, don't count other people's money because you're not good at it." But people think they are, and so there's probably I would say a pretty strong political party that's good at counting other people's money and determining what they should do with their money, and people don't like that whatsoever. And I feel in general that people can give of themselves and their own time and money, treasure, whatnot, on their own accord. And as long as people do that willingly and on their own, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a good Christian principle is to give of yourself and of your wealth to help lift up other people. It's when the state comes in and takes it from you and forces you with guns to say that you must give this and you have to do this, that it becomes egregious, and we don't like that. We don't like that at all. So that's not what that show was about. It was just about teaching kids, how to share and the joy of being able to share. But it does have just a little bit of a little bit of that European socialist feel about what can you do? It's the idea that at first you think, well, there's a fish, and the fish is beautiful. It's got all these scales, and that makes it beautiful. And it's kind of unrealistic, but it's a children's story, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like Dr. Seuss novels or books are written in reality. But you can. So the fish takes off a scale and gives it to another fish, and feels so good about it, starts giving away all of its shiny, beautiful scales to the other fish. And the moral of the story is that the rainbow fish does feel a lot better, and everybody else feels a little bit better about themselves. And I'm just thinking, well, now the rainbow fish is like just a regular old ugly fish with no beautiful scales. Can the rainbow fish regenerate the scales? We don't go into that. We don't know. Have you ever seen a fish that has lost its scales or parts of its scales? I mean, they look sick. And so it's like, that's not the message of this story, obviously. But in my mind, I'm a little twisted. And I'm like, well, now you've turned a perfectly healthy, beautiful fish into something not as healthy potentially and maybe ugly, but they feel good. I guess that's a message. Nobody maybe is thinking about it quite like that. But, that is, but when I was as I raised our boys, because like every father, you try to teach them about life. And I would explain to them, particularly when Obama was being, elected or became president, I felt it was the right time to explain what socialism is. And so, in fact, I think Jack, who now graduated from high school, I think, he was just a kid, a little baby, just starting to speak. But some of his first sentences was like, Obama is a socialist. Hey, I did that. Sorry if you're an Obama fan. But Jack's like little words would come up. Obama's a socialist, and that's why I didn't vote for Obama. But I will say, to try to explain what that word actually even means happened this weekend while we were preparing to go to the show, and we were at the graduation party for one of our friends' kids there, and sitting at the table and explaining what we were going to go do next. And one of the younger kids that was there at the table was saying, well, what is socialism? And I said, well, I kind of explained the premise of the story, but the way that I explained it to my kids growing up is this, because we do like to fish. Not about the rainbow fish, but just the idea that, if you're standing out there, it seems like if you don't have a boat and you see other people, say you're fishing on a lake, and you're standing on the shore and you're looking and you're throwing and catching your fish, and but you're not catching the biggest fish, or you're looking out to those boats that are out there, and it's like, man, those people with the boats, they're probably catching all the big fish. They can get to the deeper water. We're stuck here on the shore. We can't get out to that water. We don't have a boat. And so then there's this guy with a nice boat out there, and he's out there. He bought the boat. He'd furnished it. He put all the things in the boat. He'd done everything. And now he's out there. We don't know if he's catching more fish or not. We think he is. He's probably not. It probably doesn't work out, for the value of the fish to eat what he spent on the boat overall. But he's out there, and everybody on the shore is just looking at this boat out there covetously and saying, well, if I had a boat, then I'd be in good shape. And so, now, if it was like just sharing, the guy would come back to the dock, and then some of the folks standing there would say, could we go out fishing with you? And maybe he'd take them out on that boat and they'd go fishing together, as it would allow for the number of people that could be on the boat. Or maybe he would be so free with his boat, he'd say, okay, go ahead, take it out yourself, take your friends out. And as long as they took care of his property, then that would be fine. That would be sharing. But the way socialism works is that when the guy comes back to the dock, what they do is they dismantle the boat into equal parts and give it to everybody there. And then they continue to do that with all the other boats that come into the dock, and they dismantle and take the boats apart, and then eventually they just slap them all together into these new boats that are not good. They're leaky. They're made of boats they're made of all the parts of all of the other boats that all the other people that had boats that were out on the lake had, and those boats then are what everybody else has. So everybody's ending up with, they've all got boats and they've got crappy boats, and now they're all fishing in the same place, and there's no fish there anyway. Kids seem to understand that analogy of how socialism works, and that, I think, is what I would, if that was my children's book, it would be like the pair. Oh, Rainbow Fish. Read that book, which is probably a better version. And then my book, which would be Crappy Boat, the story of socialism. And so there you go. That's how I explain that to my 4 sons as they understand socialism. And now you can share. Feel free to share that yourself with your own children, and there you go. That's how I explain that. But that does not take away from the fact that it was a very nice musical. It was a very great performance, and the kids did a wonderful job. And I just absolutely support that our kids should be out there and performing and having the opportunity to learn those skills. And it's a lot of fun. And they can be in sports, and they can be in fine arts, and they can do all of these things. And I think that makes for a very well-rounded person and a good life. So we were able to do that. And then after that, we went uptown in our little town here in Forest City. They had a little town event. And I don't know what it was called. They were just out there on Main Street and kind of had some businesses out there, and you could, have some food trucks and just hang out and play some games and just socialize. And so we did that for about an hour and a half. And then we went over to the Bowman, which is, of course, where we performed that show that I talked about on and on incessantly over the winter, the best Christmas pageant ever. The Bowman Fine Arts Center here in our little town is a very nice facility where you can have and host all kinds of shows and performances. And one of the shows that we were sure to get to was a show called Highball, which was it was a concert performed by our good friend Donovan Johnson, who's been on this show, co-directed the Best Christmas Pageant Ever with me. We talked about Don quite a bit. He buys a lot of my hay, and just been good friends since we were just tiny little kids. And so he's just an amazing performer. Highball was a compilation show primarily of Jerry Lee Lewis shows and or songs, but then other things as well that were included in that type of genre. Just very high energy, very good, great performance. He's just such an amazing musician and performer. And I mean, he could play Great Balls of Fire when he was in high school, and it was just astounding. And obviously that was 30 years ago, over 30 years ago now. And he's just gotten so much better and performed at Carnegie Hall and done all these things. And quite a show, great community turnout. There's always more seats available. It would be nice to see the Bowman full, but I'd say it was about a third full. And, considering the marketing and situations like that, he was happy with that. He made some money. Folks got a great performance. It was a good 2-hour show. And, man, we were just happy to be there and to experience that. Great music, great performance all around. And it was the 50th birthday weekend of our good friend Don. So yesterday, which was Sunday, went out to his farm after church, and a group of people out there celebrated Don's 50th birthday. And that was just great, sitting around out there on Heartland Hill with all the goats and the sheep and the cows and the chickens and the ducks and you name it, and family that he had coming from Omaha and different places, and then just friends from the community, and celebrate Don's 50th birthday. That was a wonderful time. Just sit around in a beautiful day, sans rain, sunny skies. Everything was very nice. And so a great just weekend. And so you come home from that, and I just felt like, I'm just going to wait till Monday to record the sunny side of life and tell you all about it. And so that's what I did. And so this is what that was my weekend, and I'm really excited to share that with you. I don't know if you really care or not, but here's the things we're going to talk about today, so that you know what the purpose of this whole show is. Well, this week is a big week. It is the presidential debates, the first presidential debates between apparently the only two people running for president in the United States of America, if you ask CNN, and that would be, of course, President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. They are going to be debating in Atlanta this Thursday, down there at the CNN headquarters, which is obviously very middle ground place to perform a debate. And we're going to talk about that and a couple of other things. We'll wrap it up with maybe I can tie this all together. That's the whole goal of having a podcast. Like, there's a point, right? We'll see. We'll get there if we can. But we'll talk about this presidential debate. So 8 p.m. Central Standard Time in Atlanta. That's where the debate's going to be happening on the CNN stage. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash are going to be the moderators for that. There conveniently will be commercial breaks during the show, because I think that CNN doesn't really make any money, and so this is a great way to do that. If there's one thing you can be sure of, if you can get Donald Trump on stage at a debate, even if you can't stand him, which I think is the case with CNN, then they're absolutely going to make some money off of selling advertising in that time frame. So good opportunity for CNN to finally get some much needed cash, as they've kind of fallen by the wayside in the world of media, in my opinion. And so they're going to have commercial breaks. Now, that's never been done before. We haven't done the commercial breaks in a presidential debate, but they're going to be doing that, taking advantage of everything that they possibly can. And then look, it probably also helps the candidates, particularly President Biden, so that he has the opportunity to recover. They can keep him going for a little while. So if they can just have regular commercial breaks, he'll get a breather. That's my opinion. Maybe Donald Trump needs a breather too. Maybe he needs an opportunity to reset. I don't know. We'll talk about the rules to some degree here in a little bit and who's missing, but it reminds me of a few years ago. So our town hosted a show, a great big country music festival, and that was called Tree Town, and then it became Country Thunder. Anyway, during I think one of the final Tree Town things we had, they would do like a Thursday night show, and it had like some rock performers. And so one of the rock performers that I saw was the great Vince Neil, who is now 63 years old. Vince Neil is, and he's lived quite a hard life, I would say. This is the former lead singer of Motley Crue from back in the big 80s hair band days, and saw Vince Neil at Tree Town a few years ago on the smaller stage. That's the way it works with musicians. If you're always on a small stage until you make it to the big stage, and then maybe you hit arenas and all of that stuff and stadiums, and then you're back down to the small stage. Eventually, he's still performing, but he's 63 now. He was probably 60, 50, late 50s then, and he's struggling a little bit. Put on some weight like you do, and was maybe had some health issues. I don't know how physically fit he is in general. Don't know what his exercise regimen is. Certainly had a hard life, and so he would be performing and just doing the best rocking that he could possibly do, and then he would like just periodically run behind the stage wall, like right backstage, and that he's just back there getting a breather, drinking water, doing whatever he can to stay. Then he comes back out, ready to go again, and then he'd run back around after a song, or maybe in the middle of a song, like they'd play a little interlude, and he'd run backstage, and he'd recoup himself, and he'd come back out again. And it's like, to me, that's Joe Biden and what's going to happen on Thursday night. They're going to run these commercials, and he's going to Vince Neil it late in his career and run back behind stage, maybe get a little medicine or whatever he needs to do so that he can be on point. But overall, I think that the standards for President Biden are pretty low. And so, he just basically has to not screw up too much. And then the media will say what an incredibly coherent and capable human being he is. And so it's a pretty low bar for the president of the United States in this debate. And the debate is, in my opinion, structured very much in a way to prevent maybe President Biden from screwing up too much, and certainly preventing President Trump from being able to to cause more problems. So the mics will be shut off when the other person's talking, right? So when Joe Biden's talking, Donald Trump can't jump in there. Now that doesn't mean that he will be able to restrain himself and won't try to, but we'll see what happens. I think Joe's just pretty much got to stick to the script, whatever the script is that they've come up with him. He's not going to be reading off a teleprompter, I don't think. And so it's, he's going to have to do some from notes and memory. And I'm sure it's, large print binder right in front of him. And maybe it's tabbed out. I'm sure they've practiced it. Look, the guy's been debating for a long time, 50 years. That's, I don't know if debate is the right word. He's definitely been speaking in public and all of that. So he's no slouch when it comes to being on stage and pontificating about policy and whatnot. And there will definitely be some pretty strong and intended and I guess valid barbs towards President Trump. Certainly going to bring up the felonies that he was recently found guilty of in New York, and Trump will have to figure out a way to deal with that. And so that's going to be a big part of it. I think they're going to talk about, he's probably going to throw barbs about January 6th and whatever else he can dredge up. And, President Trump, if he can keep his cool, if he can be a person that just sticks to, there won't be a teleprompter, so he's going to have to stick to his notes, and he's going to have to be, he is entertaining. I mean, at the very least, Joe Biden is not an entertaining person. He's entertaining unintentionally, not to his benefit. And I would say the same thing about Donald Trump. He's also entertaining. He works better with an audience. There will not be a live studio audience, so they're going to vacuum that out of the room, suck the air right out of the space. And I think Donald Trump probably thrives like a stand-up comedian. He likes to gauge the reaction of the audience. That will not be available to him. So I don't know if he's going to have to imagine in his mind that everybody is going along with him, which is probably how he sees the world anyway. And so I don't know. He's going to have to figure out how to combat the January 6th thing, which is probably like, yeah, well, I think that, I'm clearly not the president of the United States. You have been for the last 4 years. Clearly that all worked out. I did not initiate an insurrection. That is ridiculous. I think that there were problems with how the states aligned their voting rules prior to that election. And I also think that there was a tremendous amount of media power and even deep state power that was invested in getting me not elected. However, I was not elected president of the United States. Here I am. And despite how I feel about it, that was 4 years ago. And in the last 4 years, you suck. And there's probably, he should probably expand on how that, he thinks President Biden sucks at being president of the United States, and do it in a way that doesn't make Joe Biden look like the frail, incompetent, incoherent victim that he probably should be. And then when it comes to talking about his indictments and his being found guilty of all these felonies, that's a real thing that did happen. He's a convicted felon now. Oh my goodness. And so there's going to be that. And I think he's just going to, and he should avoid talking about that slouch Hunter. We already know that Hunter is a D-bag, right? So there's no point in bringing, and it's also irrelevant. Hunter's not running for president of the United States. So irrelevant regarding Hunter. We already know who he is. And I think that Joe Biden would 100% just toss his own son under the bus anyway, because he wants to be president of the United States. And there's no evidence that, as much as the media tells us that he loves his child and he's just trying to be a great dad, that he wouldn't absolutely, sacrifice his son to the Moloch so that he could continue to be president of the United States. And I think the best thing about Biden is that every day he wakes up and he's like, hey, I'm president? Really? He finds out every day that he's the president. It's got to be like a joyful half hour for him. So I would say Trump would just have to respond to those 34, indictments and the fact that he's like, yeah, I was found guilty, in New York, and all of that is absolutely, true. That did happen. I don't agree with it. I think it was rigged, blah, blah, blah. We'll see what they end up doing with their sentencing. But, at the end of the day, we're taking a look at what you have been doing for the last 4 years, because Americans already know what happened in New York with that trial is a farce. And we're taking now we're taking you to the court of public opinion. And so let's move on from there because it's not something that is going to wash. And I think that is true. What is missing, and maybe there's better arguments that they come up with. I don't know. I think like you said, stay away from that situation with Hunter because it's irrelevant and it will just make him look like you don't want to give him the opportunity to look like he's a better dad than he is, and you don't want him to appear as a victim by any means. I would think so. I feel like that's probably something that. He should probably avoid talking about Hunter in response to his own convictions in that situation. But he could say, and actually Ben Shapiro pointed this out. I don't always agree with Ben Shapiro. He's definitely got some different points of view than I do. But he was, I think, correct in saying that, at least they found me. If Trump was speaking, he could say, at least the court found me competent to stand trial, where your own Justice Department found you incompetent to be able to stand trial. So that's something we need to say about that. You're guilty also, more than likely, in a court of law with the way that you handled, classified documents. You just kept them in a box next to your Corvette in your garage in Delaware. However, your own Justice Department found you incompetent and incapable of being able to stand trial. That enough should be convicting for the American people. And I think to some degree it probably is. And how the rest of it will go, who knows? Who knows? It could be a complete, disaster for either one of them. Neither one of them, in my opinion, should be the top candidate for either party. So the political parties in this case, the Republicans and the Democrats, have just done a notoriously terrible job, once again, of selecting a candidate that would be best for the country. However, one of the things that they have succeeded with both of these parties in doing is assuring that there will be no other voices heard on stage besides the two presidential candidates and Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. So they have eliminated RFK Jr. Like RFK Jr. can't be on there. CNN, they're not going to have. He says he didn't make it because he's only on the ballots in a few states and that doesn't count. Well, the name. I listened to an interview with RFK on the Megyn Kelly podcast, which I do listen to regularly. She's a very good and talented person. She's not always right either, and she gets a little bit haughty with her the value of her program. But I can. She's got way more listeners than I do. But RFK was accurate, when he said, well, I am on the ballot. These two aren't even technically on the ballot. There's a spot for the Republican candidate and a spot for the Democrat candidate, but it's not like Joe Biden or Donald Trump are necessarily on the ballot. He's at least on the ballot that he earned and got there himself. Those two have to be nominated at their party conventions later this summer. And Donald Trump could be in jail when he gets the nomination because of when they've decided to do their sentencing conveniently. So it's just what a show. It's just a clown show. But the CNN and both parties have done a really good job agreeing to the rules that Bobby Kennedy Jr. can't be on stage because he would wipe the stage with them. And then what would happen is Joe Biden would become even more befuddled and Donald Trump would be reduced, in my opinion, to just making fun of Bobby Kennedy's weird voice. That's what would happen. And so I don't necessarily agree with what RFK Jr. has in his back pocket for some of his policies or his policy ideas, but there's a lot of things that I do like about what I think RFK Jr. could actually do, and I don't trust that. I don't trust that Donald Trump is, if he gets elected president, is going to do anything about making our budget better in this country. I certainly know that. Because he hasn't. He when he was president before, he blew up the budget. He spent everybody else's money like a maniac. And obviously Joe Biden, like that's what he does. That's what they do. So both of them are not interested in doing anything to correct any of the problems with the national debt, the deficit, And I know that Joe Biden talks about cutting the deficit, but what he's talking about is like, this is what we would have spent, but we didn't spend it, so that counts as being not part of the deficit. And it's a shell game in a variety of ways. I do believe that this seems to be one of Kennedy's prime focuses is the money situation that the United States is facing, and nobody else is really talking about that. And that is what is affecting Americans, and it certainly is what is going to affect my kids, someday our grandkids, and on down the road. But nobody is really talking about that. They are just, both parties just kick it right down the road, and it is it's too bad that they can't focus on the things that I think that RFK has identified as significant. When he was talking with Megyn Kelly, she was getting after him a little bit because he kind of backhandedly said, well, the issues that they are talking about are not that it's not that they aren't significant, but they're not existential to the United States. He's really focused on how do you change government? How do you cut government? How do you eliminate bureaucracy? How do you streamline some of these other programs? How do you take a really hard look at the deep state? How do you, fix the economy so that it's able to, how do you take care of the things that do need to be taken care of without, wrecking everything else and spending money that we don't have? And those type of things. And she got after him because she said her audience, which is significant, which she reminded him of, which I thought was a little pretentious, but she does have a large audience. So she, said, well, to my listeners, immigration is existential. And he backtracked a little bit and he's like, no, I get it. You do have to protect your borders. You do have to defend, the legal parameters of what immigration is in the United States as it currently is. You don't have to change much. And he says, you do need to build a wall. You don't necessarily need to build a wall from, the Pacific Ocean all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't have to be that, but he said there definitely needs to be a wall. There needs to be better enforcement, and on and on and on. However, he's like, and I think he's right. He made, this is Bobby Kennedy Jr. making the point that both parties, both presidential campaigns and the media, they're all spending all of their time on cultural issues that are a symptom of a problem that the American people have, but it is completely designed marketing-wise to take your eye off the ball as the voter. So we need you to get wrapped around the axles about, drag shows, which are gross, in my opinion, but people are allowed to have them. And at the same time, not talking about real solutions when it comes to reordering the bureaucracy of the government or altering the agenda when it comes to how we get our budget bills through and passed, and what Congress is doing with these omnibus packages and just the stalemate that is in Congress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with that. I think that both parties are completely performing a shell game and talking about cultural issues that I don't want to put words in Kennedy's mouth, but it seemed to me that what he was seeming to say was that, you want to fix cultural issues, go to church. Yeah, I agree. Because the last thing I need is a Republican or a Democrat politician to help me with a cultural issue that is rooted in the morality of faith. And so I would say that I agree with that. But they're not going to have Kennedy on stage. It's going to be an argument between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and it's going to be Thursday night, and you're not going to get a third perspective because America, the powers that be, which includes the media, they do not want you to have a third or a fifth or a fourth, I don't know why I said those out of order, perspective on anything. They just want you to have these two Swanson microwavable meals for dinner options. Do you want chicken or do you want beef? Sit down with your TV dinner, America, and be happy with what you're served up by these two enormous, ridiculous, and fundamentally useless parties, in my opinion. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens on Thursday. We'll talk about it next week a little bit, but I encourage you to watch it to some degree, but or don't. I don't know if we care, and that's part of the problem too. Is that there's just a lot of the people that are voting for Trump are going to vote for Trump. The people that are voting for Biden are going to vote for Biden, and there's a large amount of people in both sets of that operation, whether it's Biden or Trump camp, that are going to vote for them come hell or high water. It doesn't matter whether it's whether there's felonies over here for Trump or Biden is clearly incompetent or any of these. They do not care. It's just about winning and having the W. And don't care about the country, don't care about democracy. Most of them don't even know what that means. We're actually a republic anyway, so you have that argument. But either way, there's a group of people on both sides. They're gonna vote come hell or high water blindly, and then there's this other group of people that are going to go with one or the other because they do believe that regardless of incompetence in either camp, that one of them, aligns with their values more than the other person. So they may not like either candidate. They're going to vote because they think the Democrats, are still for the little guy. Hasn't been that way ever. Or the Republicans are for a better economy and lower taxes and reducing the budget. Hasn't been that way ever. Or whatever it happens to be. There's this group, R or D, that's going to go that way, and they're not even fans of Biden or Trump necessarily, but they're going to vote that way. And then there's this ever-growing group in the middle that will vote, that has to decide who it is that they're going to vote for, and they don't like, the either candidate, and neither party cares if you like their candidate. This is what you're being served up, and you're just going to have to decide which Swanson dinner you're going to eat for the next 4 years. And so we'll start that off on Thursday and see what they have to say. And unfortunately, we won't get the opportunity to hear what RFK has to say, RFK Jr. should say, what he has to say, or any of the other candidates. Not that I particularly care about the other folks that are still running, including the knucklehead that is running, on the libertarian side whatsoever. But we'll see. We'll just see what this results in. But it does make me think of some things that, changing the subject tremendously here, what I have been consuming, what I've been, not food, because I probably eat too much of that. I'm talking about the things that I'm watching or reading or listening to, and particularly what I'm watching. So I don't watch regular TV, and I don't say that pretentiously. It's like we just eliminated our cable a few years ago. So we have other subscriptions that we do follow, Amazon and Hulu, and we do watch YouTube, and we have our we follow people on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. And I just feel like there's I'm going to use this as an example, and it's kind of how I feel about really everything that is happening politically, and maybe you do too. So recently, I will say I've started watching. I did start watching a show called Letterkenny. It's on Hulu, and it's a Canadian show. It's got 10 seasons. It's not appropriate. It's just a lot of, it's funny, but it's I can take it in small bites, and it is witty. And there are some things that I'm like, oh, that's a funny line. I might write that down because it is something maybe I want to add to my lexicon. But it's it. I don't watch it with your kids. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be watching it anyway, but it is funny. So I watch Letterkenny, and I do kind of find it interesting and humorous. But it's also it's just harsher and darker, and like postmodern or postmodern or whatever part of the period of history we've identified ourselves to be in. So occasionally what I'll do is I'll just jump back and I'll just watch episodes of Newhart or Cheers, or just, Seinfeld, or something normal, something where I can just laugh and I can be appreciative of a culture that was just not so bent on this dark, worldly view. And Newhart is great for that, by the way. It's just fluff. It's 1980s fluff. I think Bob Newhart's very funny. I remember watching it as a kid, and it's still a great show. You can find it on Amazon. I watch it, and it's funny to me. Those old shows were entertaining. They were original at the time, and there just doesn't seem to be much originality anymore. That being said, I will say that there are obviously some original type shows that have been out there, and I'll mention a few by Taylor Sheridan. So I did watch almost all of the Yellowstone seasons. I didn't watch the last one because I found, just like, I'll get to this, but I watched the Yellowstone show except for the last season. I watched 1883, which is another an offspin, like a prequel, as well as 1923, a prequel to Yellowstone, written all by Taylor Sheridan. Is very talented, very, very, very talented, and has built quite a business. He also did a great job with a show that was completely different, not a spinoff whatsoever, Tulsa King, that had Sylvester Stallone in it. I thought that was good. And then also Mayor of Kingstown, which has got Jeremy Renner in it, and that is also very good. But they're all the same in a sense that they're just very dark, and I don't care about any of the characters in the show. None of them at all. And that's why I didn't finish watching Yellowstone, because I just don't care about the Dutton family. I just don't care about those people. They're bad people. Taylor Sheridan has the ability to write these epic shows that are high energy, high action, well written, good, entertainment, and does it in a way that I have no desire to be friends with any of the people or to emulate any of the people that are in any of his shows. I don't want to be Sylvester Stallone's character in Tulsa King. I don't want to be John Dutton or any of the Duttons in Yellowstone. I don't particularly like the John Duttons or whatever their names were that from 1883 or 1923. Those were all interesting period pieces, and they're all terrible people. And the Mayor of Kingstown, which is with Jeremy Renner, is to me the same. It's just terrible people that have no God, no faith, no rooted value in what I would consider American. Not even American. They're just bad people. And they experience sad things, or sometimes they do good things, and they do help each other out, and they see things through, and they have grit. Like Taylor Sheridan in all of his shows, the characters all have grit, and they're all people that you would not want to be friends with. In my opinion, I wouldn't want anything to do with any of those characters, and because they're just not good people, and there's no desire for me to. I just quit caring. And that's why. So I like Jeremy Renner. He had this terrible accident. He was helping somebody out in the winter at the end of his driveway, and he got hit by a snowplow or something. I mean, it was just, he was in traction and really serious condition. They had to recover in order to continue filming the rest of the season. I think it's season 3 now. It might be season 3, I think, with the Mayor of Kingstown. And I like Jeremy Renner, and I appreciate the quality of the shows, the dialogue, the all of the drama, just the way it's the cinematography, everything. It's really well done. So Taylor Sheridan knows what he's doing. But his style is, he writes about characters that I just do not care about. None of them. And including, and so I just quit watching Mayor of Kingstown because I don't care about any of these people, and I wouldn't want to emulate any of these people. And they just, to me, are an indication of like what's wrong with a whole lot of America. And so maybe that's his point. I don't know. It probably isn't. He probably has a deeper vision than that. But I feel like it's a whole bunch of wicked people that have kind of outstanding stories that are and that's done in a way that makes you follow along. But if you really think about it, you're like, you wouldn't want to be friends with any of these people, and so why are you spending time watching them, which, by the way, is how I feel about most reality TV shows. Like, why would you care about the Desperate Housewives or the Real Housewives of such and such a place? Or why would you care about these people over here that are making dresses or cooking? I don't care about, I don't care. And, and I never have gotten into reality TV shows because I just feel like it's all put on, and it's not rooted in good values, in my opinion. And so I guess that leads me back to how I'm going to wrap up the show today, whether we're talking about, I don't know if I care about the I mean, I don't particularly approve of the character of either Donald Trump or Joe Biden or necessarily RFK Jr. I don't necessarily appreciate the characteristics of the people that are on modern television, even if it's done very well. And there is some originality, which I give credit to Taylor Sheridan. Like, there is originality in his shows, which is something that isn't, very much available in Hollywood anymore. And I just look at it and I go, well, this to me is, it takes me back to, it made me think of something. The world would be a better place if we could tie everything back to what Jesus said, I think. And so this is how I'm going to wrap it up for the show today. And I just wanted to go back to Luke chapter 6 and talk about when Jesus is teaching about loving your enemies. It's probably one of the harder teachings, I think, for a guy like me who does, you spend 26 years in the military, and you have to, at some point, realize that violence is a solution. It's not the preferred solution. It's usually a solution preferred by people who tell people to commit violence on their behalf, but not people who actually are capable or willing to do it themselves. And so I've got weird feelings about that, but I recognize that, violence is a thing, and being angry and being frustrated and all of that stuff. And I think that the parties realize that if you can get people drummed up and being angry and dialed in a certain way where they want you to be, and the media knows this too, then they've got control of you. But Jesus said in Luke chapter 6, starting with verse 27, he says, but hey, I don't want to paraphrase him, but to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Ugh, come on. That's the hard part, right? Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. And I feel like there's just a tremendous amount of hate. Like, I think that there's a large group of people on the Trump side that they may not necessarily love Trump, but they hate what the American government has become. They hate the American media. They hate the bureaucracy. They hate the cultural things that are happening. That they do absolutely hate that, and I think in many cases rightfully so. And I also see on the left they absolutely hate the resistance from people that they are not as they think they're not as open-minded, or they're as Obama would say, clinging to their guns and their religion and whatever it happens to be. So there is hatred on both sides, vehemently towards one another. I wouldn't say a majority of either party has this heart full of hate for the other side, but there's enough of it there on both sides that it's really driving the train. And to love your enemy is very difficult for anybody to do. So these are hard teachings from Jesus. To do good to those who hate you is particularly hard to remember to do. And I don't think it's a very popular political message to do good to those who hate you, to bless those who curse you, to pray for those who hurt you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, there you go, offer the other cheek also. That'd be a hard one for me to take. It's hard, I think, for a lot of people to take. If someone demands your coat, offer your shirt also, and give to anyone who asks. And when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. What really burns people's britches is that they want to live by that, and then there's a group of people that know that they're trying to live by that, and they do not have any qualms with taking as much as they possibly can, and knowing that you're not if you're following Christ, expecting to get it back. And so people will take. They'll take everything until your dying gasp. And people, nobody likes to be taken advantage of in that way. But Jesus says, if you only love those who love you, why should you get credit for that? Of course Joe Biden loves his children. Duh. No, this is what made me think about that. Of course Joe Biden loves Hunter. And we're trying to make a big deal about, he's just trying to be a caring dad. And of course, Donald Trump likes those people who, like him. And then we know what happens when you say you don't like him. Then he hates you. But then if you say you like him again, then he'll like you. So there's no credit associated from Jesus in either case there. He says, if you only love those who love you, why should you get credit for that? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much. And if you lend money only to those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for a full return. Jesus is saying there's nothing special about loving your own children, or because wicked people love their own children. For doing good to others, if there's a payback. There's nothing special about that. No credit for that, so to speak. Jesus says, love your enemies with an exclamation point. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Then your reward from heaven will be very great, and you will truly be acting as children of the Most High, for he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. You must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. And then he goes on, because he teaches about judging others. And this is something that gets construed a lot. And I'm not a biblical expert, but I think it's important to read the whole Bible. It's in entirety. And it's fun to read, obviously, the stuff in red letter, because this is the word of Jesus Christ himself. He says, do not judge others. This is verse 37 from chapter 6 of Luke. Don't judge others, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn others, or it will all come back against you. Forgive others, and you will be forgiven. Give, and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Then Jesus gave the following illustration, and this is famous. Can one blind person lead another? Won't they both fall into a ditch? Students are not greater than their teacher, but the student who is fully trained will become like the teacher. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying, friend, let me get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite! First, get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. And so I'm fully aware of how hypocritical the I can be, and I hope that we're all conscious of our own hypocrisy. I do think that it's important that, obviously, Jesus says we need to love our neighbor. We need to love our enemy. We need to, first and foremost, love the Lord our God with all our heart, and put God first. And I think that if we do those things, these other things will work themselves out. And when it comes to politics, you got to take care of the log in our own eye before we do the other stuff. But we do the other stuff. Like, Jesus didn't just end like, take care of the log in your own eye. Okay, bye. He said, take care of the log. Get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. So the argument doesn't stop with, in our cultural issues where we have true Christian values that say, we're not going to do that. That is sinful practice. And then the response from the other party is like, you need to take care of the log in your own eye, you hypocrite. And you're like, correct. And I have. And so now I'm able to deal with the speck in your eye. you still got to deal with that speck in your eye, my friend. So, yeah, get rid of the log in our own eye. And then we still have to deal with the speck in our friend's eye. And that is something that's the rest of the sentence there. So, and the final part of this is, just to wrap up on this, a good tree, Jesus says, can't produce bad fruit. And a bad tree can't produce good fruit. A tree is identified by its fruit. Figs are never gathered from thorn bushes, and grapes are not picked from branches or from bramble bushes. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. So as we go out, it's probably best as we enter a week where we have presidential debates, where I'm certain that the men on stage are not particularly interested in loving their enemy. I think that they're both particularly, I can't speak into the heart and the soul of any person. Only God can do that. I'm not a betting man. I don't spend time in casinos and gambling and whatnot. However, I would say, based on the fruits of each of these men's labors, they are producing more evil than good on both of their parts. And we just have to remember, as faithful people, which hopefully you are, that we have to be able to discern the lies and the love of the world, and replace it with the wisdom that we gain from the Spirit given to us through Christ, and our focus on Him. And so, no matter what happens on Thursday night, no matter what happens with the rain rolling, no matter what happens with what it is that you are consuming today, tonight, this week, and hereafter on whatever subscription service or TV show or program or in the books or podcast that you consume, remember that our first focus has to be in Christ. And when you have that as the lens through which you view the world, the rest of it becomes, I think, a lot easier to endure. And so that's it. That's what we're hoping for you. That's what I'm hoping for this week. That wouldn't it be great if both of these men on Thursday night could acknowledge the logs in their own eye? Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be a great turning point for America if both of these men, since RFK Jr. can't be there, wouldn't it be great if they would just acknowledge that they were wrong, that they were weak in this area, that they could get better here, that if they had the opportunity, they would do some things differently, whatever it would be. Well, don't get your hopes up, folks. I'm not I think it's been a while either of these men have been in the good book. But we can always pray for them, and that's what we have to do. Jesus says it, pray for those, pray for your enemies, be kind to them, and that includes praying for the people that, are, for whatever reason, put in charge of running this nation that we live in. Until then, I hope to see you next week, or at least talk to you here on the sunny side of life, and go out there and be the sunny side this week of somebody else's life. I want to thank all our friends and guests for stopping by for this episode of The Sunny Side of Life. All the Sunny Side of Life players who stopped by, creative support provided every day by my incredible wife Heidi and our fantastic 4 boys. Thanks to every one of our listeners. That means you. A big shout out to my brothers and sisters in uniform holding the line around the world. Share the word, folks. Let the people know what we're up to. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and follow us on social media. All skits are written or adapted and directed by me, Troy Thompson, and are produced here at Sunnyside Farm Studios and delivered to all platforms by Buzzsprout. Music and sound effects are provided by Soundstripe. The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. Now, none of this is possible without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life, liberty and pursuits, be in Christ, and made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.